Welcome, friends and foes, survivors and killers. Let's sit around the campfire together and talk about Dead by Daylight. Specifically the, much anticipated Twins Rework, because it's arrived on the PTB and I have some colourful thoughts, shall we say, on the changes. So it's finally here. We've been waiting 28 months since a statement by Patrick, the original High on My Monster, confirming that a Twins Rework was in the pipeline. Every time behaviour's on a Q&A or a Reddit AMA since then, I and other concerned parties have been asking questions, begging for details to know how worried we should be about the future of our killer. And now we finally have an answer, and I'm afraid the diagnosis is grim. Let me start off by giving you the lowdown on what's been changed. The first thing you'll notice is a series of quality of life and numbers improvements. The time for charging Pounce, unbinding Victor, switching between Charlotte and Victor, all of these have been decreased. You can switch now when Charlotte is close to a hook, and Victor can be recalled anywhere on the map if he isn't attached to somebody. Victor also regenerates on Charlotte slower after he's kicked by a survivor, and Victor's streaks can be detected on the visual terror radius indicator, kind of like Hunter's Lullaby does. But the biggest changes can be seen in how Victor interacts with survivors directly. PTB Victor doesn't attach to healthy survivors like he does on the live servers. Instead, he will just injure the survivor and fall off them, recovering quickly and being immune to being crushed by any means during this time. While Victor downs a survivor, he will automatically attach to them, preventing them from going from the dying to injured states for as long as he remains attached, and can be removed either by a survivor kicking him, by Charlotte picking up the survivor, or after 20 seconds have passed. Charlotte also gets dribbles of haste to make picking up smoother. Whenever Victor is grabbing somebody on the ground or holding a locker shut, Charlotte gains 10% haste, which goes away when she hits a survivor or when Victor's removed. So before we get too far into what's wrong with this rework, and trust me, there's a lot, I want to talk for a little bit about what's right with it. The successful parts of this rework that I'm glad behaviour managed to implement, and the big one is the quality of life changes and number adjustments. A major issue with Twins, one would argue the major issue, was their extreme, unnecessary clunkiness. A 5-second cooldown on downing survivors with Victor, 3 seconds of moving at the speed of molasses as Charlotte wakes up. It all made them feel way worse than they had any right to. It caused a lot of frustration among players. I'm glad it appears to have been largely addressed. The dynamics for switching between Charlotte and Victor feel less like you're trying to drive a garbage truck up a very steep hill. Victor's regeneration time going up to 10 seconds from 6 is also a change I welcome. Rewarding survivors for getting rid of Victor when they should, and preventing the killer from spamming him too aggressively is a great and healthy adjustment many of us have been demanding for a while. On top of that, Charlotte can now switch close to hooks, which will make changing much smoother, although that will fill the anti-camp meter. This won't be used so much to let Charlotte face camp, because the anti-camp will have the survivor off the hook in a few seconds, but the major benefit here is that this allows Twins to switch while a survivor is in the middle of the hook death animation. No more being blue balled by survivors dying. Which is nice. I can't fucking switch because Feynman is too busy dying! Are you... Ugh! I hate this! I couldn't switch because I was too near a dead survivor, are you joking? The most impressive change to me, though, is the free recall option Victor has now. Whenever Victor is roaming around the world and you switch to Charlotte, you'll be able to recall Victor at any time, from anywhere back to Charlotte whenever you like. And this has two distinct functions. It gives more flexibility with using Victor at Charlotte's location, and it means Victor can be retrieved if he's stuck somewhere he can't get out without needing to jump him on a high surface and make him kill himself, which is a nice piece of future-proofing and potential risks with new map changes. This is pretty forward-thinking of behaviour, and I'm very pleased they added it. Lots of little changes that make Twins feel better to play and play against at no real cost to either side. Even Victor's shriek showing up on the visual terror radius indicator is a great accessibility change. That being said, I have a couple of problems with how Twins feel to play in terms of smoothness, quality of life or edge case interactions, the bugs and Twins add-on changes. Twins received 7 add-on changes, nerfed Tiny Fingernail and Toy Store because their effects were incorporated entirely or partially into the base kit, Rusted Needle, Sewer Sludge, Weighty Rattle and both the iridescent add-ons, Eerie Pendant and Silencing Cloth, and these changes are odd. Some of the changes do make sense, like the brown add-ons and Rusted Needle. Needle was just changed to make it consistent with the other hemorrhage effects. And Sewer Sludge at least does a thing now. Even if the thing isn't good or useful like you'd ever actually want an add-on to be, it isn't actively detrimental like old Sludge was. The problems I have are on Weighty Rattle, the Eries, and more conspicuously the add-ons that didn't change with the rework. Silencing Cloth went from being a legitimately really good eerie add-on to being almost completely useless, because survivors will rarely remove Victor manually, due to Charlotte booking it towards a down at max speed. But the one that annoyed me so much is the changed iridescent pendant. DBD had a load of exposed add-ons that didn't do anything, but Iridescent Pendant gave rise to a really fun build called Fishing Twins, where you would bring Insidious and Eerie Pendant alongside Victor's Soldier, so that you Insidious next to Victor and ambush survivors who got brave enough to kick him. The fishing begins, Kate! Ha ha! Ha 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 ha! Fishing complete! Ha ha! You could run this with other stealth perks like Trail of Torment or ambush perks like Dragon's Grip, and play a really unique jump scare build that caught players out all the time. Oh, and who can forget what's been done to Weighty Rattle? This green add-on went from being mediocre at best to being one of the most powerful add-ons in the game, because Victor breaking you for a minute on every pounce hit is insane. Think of the value you get from Force Penance, already a staple Twins perk, 90 seconds per protection hit, and you'll be getting most of that on every single Victor hit, protection or not. And because Victor will be getting almost every hit by himself on the PTB version of Twins, that's every single hit applying Sloppy Butcher on crack. It's absurdly good. Victor's hits are effectively free. If you back rev with all the speed you'll have now, his hits are legitimately impossible to mess up, and you can chain them together without anything survivors can do to stop him. So against Twins, it's practically impossible to ever get a reset off. You're broken for a longer duration than Victor's normal chase time from healthy to down. I can't stress this enough. You'll hit somebody with Victor, chase somebody else healthy, and take both their health states, and you'll still be broken. This is beyond absurd, and amplifies Twins' strength even beyond where the rework would ordinarily put them. And that strength is high. Really high, like best killer in the game high. Don't worry though, if Weighty Rattle isn't your thing, you can just run double speed and back rev survivors to death even faster, because with Toy Sword and most of Fingernail based kit, and most of the rest of the add-ons still being kinda dog shit, Weighty Rattle is the only reason to not just stack speed and give survivors even less options in chase than the none they already had. And here's where the issue with the Twins rework begins to seep in, because by removing some of the pain points associated with old Twins, behaviour made them very accessible to newer or less experienced players who might otherwise have been put off. But they've definitely made them a little too accessible, at the cost of the survivor experience playing against them, and their balance, because new Twins are absurdly strong. Twins have always been solo queue terrors because their counterplay requires coordination from the survivors and solo queue teammates are too busy scratching their asses and eating the lint from their belly buttons to kick Victor when they're supposed to, stay in pairs, or help reset to prevent a snowball. That was skill expression against Twins, because Victor's mechanical counterplay in chase was very limited, to say the least. If Victor really wanted to hit you, he could very consistently, with very little you could mechanically do to prevent it. Victor can effectively play almost every palette in the game, with slide tech letting you actually play every palette in the game, so the counterplay revolved around denying Victor the ability to be used effectively in the first place, wasting the Twins' time and economising your time efficiency as a group. And mechanically, the first half of that statement is still true. Victor has negligible mechanical counterplay. Pounce works the same way it always has, the way it does on live, and the only difference is the charge time, which is just making add-on base kit that every Twins is running anyway. In theory, Twins would have counterplay now that they didn't have before, because a survivor could stand directly under a pallet while healthy, get hit by Victor, and as soon as he injures you, stun him with the pallet and then book it as far from Charlotte as you can. But Victor now can't even be killed by a pallet during his hit cooldown. He gains a magic shield that protects him from any sort of counterplay whatsoever. A major part of what made old Twins fairer to go against was that despite his strength, Victor couldn't efficiently down you from healthy, and the reworkers completely annihilated that. And the key word here is efficiently, because while Twins have just little mechanical counterplay as they've ever had, in fact even less because you can't stun Victor with a pallet after a hit anymore, the complex and skill-expressive macro counterplay that defined the Twins' experience doesn't exist anymore, without any real input from the killer or counterplay from the survivors. Twins are more efficient than they've ever been before, and much of what survivors used to be able to do to slow them down does very little anymore. For example, if Victor was chasing an injured survivor like you'd normally expect him to be, a healthy one could go into body block, forcing Victor to hit them instead. Or they could wait in the wings for Victor to down the injured player, and then run in for a kick once he hits them so they can pick the slug up. What the survivor should do depends on whether Charlotte is close enough to get the injured survivor or not. If she's miles away, the survivor is better off letting the down happen and then kicking and picking, because they'll be able to get them off the ground before Charlotte can capitalise on it. But if Charlotte's too close, she'll interrupt the heal and get her hook anyway. Or even worse, could start slugging if the rescuer is still around. This creates a decision point, room for counterplay and a way to foil the killer's plans that depends on the survivor's judgment and timing. But that decision does not exist anymore. You can't take a hit because then he'll just down you or the person he's chasing after he recovers. You have to let him get the down and then kick him off instead, which will only do anything if Charlotte isn't close enough to capitalise. The counterplay options have been reduced, and the options that still exist are more circumstantial and less impactful. The same thing can be seen in locker situations. Victor attaches himself to lockers just like he used to, so lockers can be used to get Victor off of you in chase if Charlotte's far enough away. But that far enough away distance just got a whole lot bigger between Charlotte's shorter wake-up time and the haste she gets while Victor's holding a locker shut. The urgency that Twins had to hit a survivor quickly so they can't W key away to a locker that's too far away is completely gone. And while I think the shorter wake-up time feels great to make sure you're not spending 3 of your precious 10 seconds to a trapped survivor waking up from Charlotte's hangover, the haste on top feels like too much, too easily. Lockers are now a much less reliable counter to a killer who already had not a huge amount of counterplay, and survivors didn't gain new counterplay to Victor to compensate. Staying healthy, staying in pairs, taking hits against Victor, economising your medkit resources to prioritise fast pickups, none of this matters anymore. And nothing's replaced it either to give playing against Twins depth in other areas. They just lack the depth they used to, and this could only be a negative for the survivor experience playing against them. You'd think Skull Merchant is egregious for her ability to injure you quickly? Yeah, just try losing both health states faster than Skull Merchant could ever take one. The one plus for survivors is that due to a loss of Victor's ability to chain downs together, you're not liable to get 4-man slugged by a Twins anymore. But Twins had enough coordinated counterplay that if you were playing well, that shouldn't be happening anyway. And that lack of ability to slug has been replaced with consistent 20-30 second chases, where you can lose both health states and get hooked with pretty much zero counterplay for you or anybody on your team at any stage. I know some people really hate slugging and being slugged, but I think I'd prefer to get slugged for the win after my team and I made a series of mistakes that the killer capitalised on than have my only interactions with the killer be entirely one-sided, every chase, every time, and have no other choices to make in the game at all, because the killer is entirely designed to be a skillless downing machine. But here, friends and foes, is where the Twins Rework can be seen at its complete worst, because while it's not great to have a killer power that's pretty much devoid of counterplay, it's also not unprecedented. Legion and Short Legion both have powers that more or less just give them free hits on cooldown with little counterplay, so Victor being turned into even shorter Legion is nothing new. And as I said to a giant sentient sinus once, every killer can and often does put you in an uncounterable situation sometimes. If anything, I'd argue the ability to put a survivor in an uncounterable situation is a core part of killer skill expression, so the new Twins having negligible counterplay is nothing new or unique to them. What is new and unique though is their strength, and that this isn't a new killer releasing with these problems, but a rework to an existing one. Twins 2.0 isn't a new killer they've added to the game, it's a replacement for the killer they're deleting, Live Twins, and therein lies the rework's greatest failure. The Twins Rework thoroughly misunderstands why Twins players love Twins. Every element of this rework suggests to me that behaviour listened far too much to players who don't like Twins and tried to tailor the changes to be more broadly appealing to them, instead of making changes that made the people who already like Twins like them more. And this feels like not just a waste, but a stab in the back to the players who've loyally stuck with this killer for the past 3 years. Let me give you an example. Latching on to healthy survivors instead of bouncing off of them and getting to attack again. A common complaint among players who didn't like Twins was that survivors could quote-unquote take Victor hostage. If Victor attached to a healthy survivor, they often just wouldn't give him back, forcing the killer to wait 30 seconds after attaching to manually recall him to use their power again. This meant that sometimes you went prolonged periods without access to your power, something a lot of players hated, so it made sense why behaviour would want to remove it if they wanted to make Twins more widely appealing. But if you ask somebody who really likes Twins what I think of the mechanic, you'll hear a different side to the story. To me and other Twins players like Lynxie and Quincy Cat, latching isn't survivors holding your power hostage, something you always need to avoid. It's a tool that both sides can use to their advantage. Yes, a survivor can hold Victor to deny power usage or take a hit for a friend, but the killer can choose to latch onto a healthy survivor for a number of reasons. For example, the incapacitation from Victor's attachment prevents heals or stops slugs from being picked up. This gets particularly unpleasant with hemorrhage because by the time the attached survivor gets Victor off their back, a person they're healing will have lost much of their healing progress. It's also nice to stop important gens popping, since incapacitating a survivor can buy you the time you need to get a pain resonance hook or prevent adrenaline from going off. It turns off items too, so you can stick him on some rat with background player on a flashbang or something to prevent them from getting a save. You could even use Victor's attachment to gain extra info. If Victor's playmate runs near their teammates, you'll pick them up on Killer Instinct, and you can use this time to deduce an entire team's location and take a guess at their next move from just one attachment. In my Twins guides, I described something I call the 2 and 2 model, where you want to put survivors in situations where 2 players are busy at once as often as you can. An attachment is a huge tool to help you do that. Say you've just gotten your first down with Victor and you want to get some extra pressure. If you're confident that you can find and hit a survivor before they get the slug up, you can leave your first down on the floor and immediately latch onto a healthy one. This puts survivors in a very sticky situation. One person is injured and incapacitated holding Victor. One person is being picked up and hooked by Charlotte, meaning the other two players have to do everything. One of them has to go and hook the survivor. Victor's babysitter can't do it. And if Charlotte enters chase with the fourth person, that's the entire team off gens at the start of the match. If you can't find the next person, miss your pounce, or just waste too much time getting the latch on, you've net lost time efficiency. They might even use that time to get your first down off the floor. But if you do this right, the entire team has to warp around you, splitting pressure, to stem the bleeding that you've caused before the game has even really started. This is the appeal of Twins, the ability to apply strategic pressure to a team to force them to bend to your rules of play. And if they don't bend, you'll break them in half. It's that feeling of watching the game slip out of the survivor's grasp, grinding them down with injuries and time wasters and incapacitation and sheer reach of being in two places at once. Yes, they are clunky. Yes, they don't work. But when you're doing it right, it feels like you're shoving the survivors through a meat grinder, or holding their heads under the water until the bubbles stop. So what do new Twins offer instead? No choices, no nuance, no ability to express your skill in any way that matters, just raw power and lethality. That is it. You don't win because you played smart, you win because you played Twins. A lot of the footage I'll be using in this video is old Twins gameplay footage from months or even years ago, because I'll be honest, I could only manage a few matches on the PTB. Something happened to me that doesn't happen very often playing for gameplay footage, especially for Twins. I got bored. Within like a game or two, I thought to myself, all I'm doing here is playing find, hit, down, hook, find, hit, down, hook. There's no thought going into any of this, no choices I'm making at any stage. If I can land a pounce, which by the way is not hard to do if you just back rev like you should rather than going for longer shots, every single other part about new Twins plays itself. You didn't get to make any meaningful choices, and the survivors don't either. This isn't even a balance thing. Even if they somehow nerf new Twins into a balanced killer or even a shit one, the total lack of decision points, of choices that you can make to express your skill, will still be a gaping void that the killer's current iteration simply can't fill. Behaviour wanted to get rid of the slugging playstyle by removing the choice for the killer to make decisions the survivor didn't enjoy. But they didn't replace it with any new decisions, anything worth playing with at all. Twins are just a killer whose niche is winning matches now, and when they get nerfed, which they will, there'll be a killer whose niche is nothing. We're not watching a rework, we're watching a public execution. So in summation, the Twins Rework is a failure on almost every metric. Other than the quality of life changes which make switching smoother, punish Twins more for getting Victor killed, and delay pickups that would actually onto down survivors, this entire rework has been an unmitigated disaster. Twins are rampantly too strong. They have the depth of a puddle of piss, and their macro choices, time management strategy that defined old Twins before, since their release, has been gutted and replaced with sheer, raw strength. Strength that I doubt is making it off the PTB. They're so blatantly overpowered that there's no way Twins in their current state make it to live servers. They didn't even fix the bugs. Every single bug Twins have on the live servers is still there on the PTB. Genuinely, the best counterplay to the killer nowadays is finding a slight incline or flight of stairs and trying to force a game-breaking bug. Twins are going to get nerfed for sure between PTB and live, but I suggest going one step further. This rework, or at least the elements that govern how Victor interacts with survivors, should be completely scrapped. Maybe keep the quality of life stuff, the faster wake up, the toy sword and fingernail base kit, the longer cooldown on the kick. This stuff is good. But anything to do with how Victor hits survivors, just why did they change this? Why should it stay the same? What good reason do we have to keep this around till live servers? The bare minimum I would suggest would be to make these two changes. Force Victor to attach to healthy survivors when he hits them, like he does on live, so Victor cannot take 2 health states in about 10 seconds, and give Victor a post-hit cooldown after hitting an injured survivor like they do now. Either the 5 seconds that Twins have now, or the 3 seconds they had on their release, allowing Victor to be kicked during that time, and give the option to latch onto a survivor during this time. So you can either choose to keep going and risk losing your down so you can spread your pressure, or play it safe, latch on and take your hook. Then if you want to secure your pickup with a 10% haste and the ability for other survivors to get an easy save, you can. And the haste makes for a power struggle a lot weaker against them, because Charlotte might be able to make it to the down in time. These two changes would at least keep Twins' current gameplay style and identity largely intact. And yes, I know that isn't what Behaviour wanted to do with this rework. They wanted to change the killer's playstyle fundamentally and move it away from being a pressure-splitting slugging killer. But let me just make something unignorably clear. Even disregarding Behaviour's shoddy implementation that left them disgustingly overpowered, getting rid of that identity was a shit idea on the face of it. Imagine if they'd gone into a rework to Hag being like, we want to reduce Hag's reliance on peeking an area she's trapped up and carefully patrolling it. Like, yeah, sure, some players might prefer that, but that's not the point. You've got to give the killer something interesting to do, or else you're pretty much just deleting them without anything interesting to replace it with. and the Twins rework fails to do that. And the lack of any other killers in the game doing anything even remotely like Twins means that the people who liked old Twins don't have another way to scratch that itch. This rework has been a comprehensive letdown. There's just no other way to describe it. A lot of this gameplay footage is old footage of current Twins on live servers, because I didn't play much of this PTB, and I didn't keep going, because let's be honest, I got bored. Yeah, after 3 years of playing Twins more or less non-stop, only taking breaks when the killer was literally too buggy to function or when a new toy came out for me to play with. I played Twins during old 100% speed circle of healing, when survivors were getting picked up faster than your post-hit cooldowns, and entire teams could self-reset between picking a survivor up and hooking them. I played them and loved them during the absolute worst times Twins have ever existed in, but this is enough to break me. I played Twins in the most adverse conditions a killer can exist in, and did so with a smile on my face, but I couldn't make it more than 3 games in this PTB without just wanting it all to stop. I don't think there's anything that I can say that says more than that. If Twins go live the way they are, I won't be playing them anymore. In fact, nobody will be. Twins are gone. They don't exist anymore. Congratulations, behaviour. You've murdered a killer. This kind of thing is exactly what I was concerned about, and I'm at least lucky that the rest of the community seems to be in agreement with me on this one. Because behaviour might actually listen and slam the brakes on this rework. But while we know for sure that Twins are definitely getting changes from this PTB, what they're actually going to go with for a nerf is a little unclear, because while they are rampantly overpowered, fixing the problematic element, Vic to be able to hit you twice in a row, is actually very hard to do without making them complete dog shit or just going back to old Twins. What I'm frightened of is one of two nightmare scenarios. Either this rework hits with little to no changes and Twins single-handedly start ruining the game, or behaviour panics and drops a major nerf, like allowing Victor to be kicked after a successful hit, which would more or less murder Twins by making them Legion if Legion couldn't chain stab, or make Victor move more slowly so that trees and rocks become infinites against him. Twins are a killer that's very hard to nerf without making them utterly comically useless, so while I think their current level of power is utterly beyond justification, I am worried about how they intend to nerf them, because reworking the lowest pick rate killer in the game by completely crippling them is not what I would call a quality mid-chapter, and yet, other than not reworking them at all, that's probably the best case scenario. So your only option here is scrap it. Go back to the drawing board completely and do not release this rework. Put the quality of life stuff in it onto regular Twins, and let us keep the killer that we've been enjoying for years. Truth be told, I don't see any other choice.